Salut tout le monde, hello, 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 rebonjour, rebonjour à tout le monde. J'espère que vous allez toujours très bien. On va partir parce que je crois que ça a démarré, donc on y va. Alors attendez, on partage.
Elon has some opening remarks. Elon?
Thanks, Martin. So to recap, in Q1, we navigated several unforeseen challenges as well as the ramp of the updated Model 3 in Fremont. There was, as people have seen, the EV adoption rate globally is under pressure, and a lot of other auto manufacturers are pulling back on EVs and pursuing plug-in hybrids instead. We believe this is not the right strategy, and electric vehicles will ultimately dominate the market. Despite these challenges, the Tesla team did a great job executing in a tough environment, and energy storage deployments, the Megapack in particular,
Je vais essayer de vous
reached an
trouver
all-time high in Q1,
voir si on peut avoir le
leading to
français, hein.
record profitability for
Mais
the
là,
energy
visiblement, on
business.
peut pas.
And that looks likely to continue to increase in the quarters and years ahead.
Tester avec Safari.
It will increase. We actually know
Je
that
sais
it
pas
will.
si vous entendez bien en tout cas.
So significantly faster than the car business, as we expected. We also continue to expand our AI training capacity in Q1, more than doubling our training compute sequentially. In terms of the new product roadmap, there's been a lot of talk about our upcoming vehicle line in the past several weeks. We've updated our future vehicle lineup to accelerate the launch of new models ahead of previously mentioned start of production in the second half of 2025. So we expect it to be more like the early 2025, if not late this year. These new vehicles, including more affordable models, will use aspects of the next generation platform, as well as aspects of our current platforms, and will be able to be produced on the same manufacturing lines as our current vehicle lineup. So it's not contingent on any new factory or massive new production line. It'll be made on our current production lines much more efficiently. And we think this should allow us to get to over 3 million vehicles of capacity when realized to the full extent. Regarding FSD version 12, which is the pure AI-based self-driving, people if you haven't experienced this, I strongly urge you to try it out. It's profound, and the rate of improvement is rapid. So we've now turned that on for all cars with the cameras and inference computer and everything from hardware 3 on in North America. So it's been pushed out to, I think, around 1.8 million vehicles, and we're seeing about half of people use it so far, and that percentage is increasing with each passing week. So we now have over 300 billion miles that have been driven with FSD V12. Since the launch of full self-driving, supervised full self-driving, it's become very clear that the vision-based approach with end-to-end neural networks is the right solution for scalable autonomy. And it's really how humans drive. Our entire road network is designed for biological neural nets and eyes. So naturally, cameras and digital neural nets are the solution to our current road system. To make it more accessible, we've reduced the subscription price to $99 a month, so it's easy to try out. And as we've announced, we'll be showcasing our purpose-built robotaxi or cybercab in August.
Je coupe une seconde. Je n'arrive pas à avoir le sous-titre en français. Est-ce que vous y arrivez par chez vous à l'avoir en français? Il y a des fois on y arrive, il y a des fois on n'y arrive pas. Là, je l'ai que en anglais. Alors le sous-titre automatique. Je sais pas. Si vous avez une idée.
In our progress, we are at this point constrained, and so we're making rapid progress. We've installed and commissioned, meaning they're actually working, 35,000 H100 computers or GPUs. GPU is the wrong word. They need a new word. I always feel like a wince when I say GPU because it's not GPU. G stands for graphics and it doesn't do graphics. But anyway, roughly 35,000 H100s are active, and we expect that to be probably 85,000 or thereabouts by the end of this year. And training, just for training. We are making sure that we're being as efficient as possible in our training. It's not just about the number of H100s, but how efficiently they're used. So in conclusion, we're super excited about our autonomy roadmap. I think it should be obvious to anyone who's driving version 12 in a Tesla that it is only a matter of time before we exceed the reliability of humans, and not much time at that. And we're really headed for an electric vehicle, an autonomous future. And I'll go back to something I said several years ago, that in the future, gasoline cars that are not autonomous will be like riding a horse and using a flip phone. And that will become very obvious in hindsight. We continue to make the necessary investments that will drive growth and profits for Tesla in the future. And I wanted to thank the Tesla team for incredible execution during this period, and look forward to everything that we have planned ahead. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And Vaibhav has some comments as well.
Thanks, Scott. It's important to acknowledge what Elon said. From our auto business perspective, we did see a decline in revenues quarter over quarter, and those were primarily because of seasonality, uncertain macroeconomic environment, and the other reasons which Elon had mentioned earlier. Auto margins declined from 18.9 to 18.5%, excluding the impact of Cybertruck. The impact of pricing actions was largely offset by reductions in per unit cost and the recognition of revenue from auto park feature for certain vehicles in the US that previously did not have that functionality. Additionally, while we did experience higher costs due to the ramp of Model 3 in Fremont and disruptions in Berlin, these costs were largely offset by cost reduction initiatives. In fact, if we exclude Cybertruck and Fremont Model 3 ramp costs, the revenue from auto margins improved slightly. Currently, normalized Model Y cost per vehicle in Austin and Berlin are already very close to that of Fremont. Our ability to reduce costs without sacrificing on quality was due to the amazing efforts of the team in executing Tesla's relentless pursuit of efficiency across the business. We've also witnessed that as other OEMs are pulling back on their investments in EV, there is increasing appetite for credits, and that means a steady stream of revenue for us. Obviously, seeing others pull back from EV is not the future we want. We would prefer the whole industry went
les nouveaux
all in.
véhicules qui sont en train de monter en capacité
On
de
the demand
production,
front,
en fait, les
we've
voitures
undertaken a variety of initiatives,
à
including
Berlin et tout ça, ils sont
lowering
déjà
the price of both
vachement
the
pas chers à
purchase and
produire, quoi.
subscription options.
En fait, c'est les
For
nouveaux
FSD,
qui viennent
launching
planter
extremely
la
attractive
moyenne.
leasing specials for the Model 3 in the US for $299 a month, and offering attractive financing options in certain markets. We believe that our awareness activities paired with attractive financing will go a long way in expanding our reach and driving demand for our products. Our energy business continues to make meaningful progress, with margins reaching a record of 24.6%. We expect the energy storage deployments for 2024 to grow at least 75% higher from 2023. And accordingly, this business will begin contributing significantly to our overall profitability. Note that there is a bit of lumpiness in our storage deployments due to a variety of factors that are outside of our control, so deployments may fluctuate quarter over quarter.
Ce que je vous disais tout
On
à
the
l'heure,
operating expense front, we saw a sequential increase from our AI initiatives, continued investment in future projects, marketing, and other activities. We had negative free cash flow of $2.5 billion in the first quarter. The primary driver of this was an increase in inventory from a mismatch between builds and deliveries, as discussed before, and our elevated spend on CapEx across various initiatives, including AI compute. We expect the inventory build to reverse in the second quarter and free cash flow to return to positive again. As we prepare the company for the next phase of growth, we had to make the hard but necessary decision to reduce our headcount by over 10%. The savings generated are expected to be well in excess of $1 billion on an annual run rate basis. We are also getting hyper-focused on CapEx efficiency and utilizing our installed capacity in a more efficient manner. The savings from these initiatives, including our cost reductions, will help improve our overall profitability and ultimately enable us to increase the scale of our investments in AI. In conclusion, the future is extremely bright, and the journey to get there, while challenging, will be extremely rewarding. Once again, I would like to thank the whole Tesla team for delivering great results, and we can open it up to Q&A.
Thank you. Okay, let's start with investor Q&A.
Allez,
The
c'est
first
les questions qu'on
question
a vues tout à l'heure,
is,
alors. Hein.
what is the status of 4680? What is the current output? Lars?
Sure. 4680 production increased about 18-20% from Q4, reaching greater than 1K a week for Cybertruck, which is about 7 gigawatt hours per year, as we posted on X. We expect to stay ahead of the Cybertruck ramp with the cell production throughout Q2 as we ramp the 3rd of 4 lines in phase 1, while maintaining multiple weeks of cell inventory to make sure we're ahead of the ramp. Because we're ramping, COGS continues to drop rapidly week over week, driven by yield improvements throughout the lines and production volume increases. So our goal, and we expect to do this, is to beat supplier costs of nickel-based cells by the end of the year.
Thank you. The second question is on Optimus. So what is the current status of Optimus? Are they currently performing any factory tasks? When do you expect to start mass production?
We are able to do simple factory tasks, or at least I should say factory tasks in the lab. In terms of actually, we do think we will have Optimus in limited production in the factory, in the actual factory itself, doing useful tasks before the end of this year.
Wow.
And then I think we may be able to sell it externally by the end of next year.
Quoi?
These are just guesses.
Elon time, Elon time.
Optimus will be more valuable than everything else combined. Because if you've got a sentient humanoid robot that is able to navigate reality and do tasks at request, there is no meaningful limit to the size of the economy. So that's what's going to happen. And I think Tesla is best positioned of any humanoid robot maker to be able to reach volume production with efficient inference on the robot itself. This perhaps is a point that is worth emphasizing. Tesla's AI inference efficiency is vastly better than any other company. No, there's no company even close to the inference efficiency of Tesla. We've had to do that because we were constrained by the inference hardware in the car. We didn't have a choice. But that will pay dividends in many ways.
Attends,
Thank you.
ils vont avoir le robot qui va marcher chez eux avant la fin de l'année et ils pensent qu'ils pourront le vendre avant la fin de l'année prochaine à d'autres gens. Wow. Bon alors,
And how should we think about the appropriate safety threshold compared to human
drivers? Ça veut dire que ça avance quand même vachement bien, quoi. C'est pas dans 10 ans.
There are a handful of states that already have adopted autonomous vehicle laws. These states are paving the way for operations, while the data for such operations guides a broader adoption of driverless vehicles. I think Ashok can talk a little bit about our safety methodology, but we expect that these states and the work ongoing, as well as the data that we're providing, will pave the way for a broad-based regulatory approval in the US at least, and then other countries as well.
Yeah. It's actually been pretty helpful that other autonomous car companies have been cutting a path through the regulatory jungle. That's actually quite helpful. And they have obviously been operating in San Francisco for a while. I think they got approval for City of LA. So these approvals are happening rapidly. I think if you've got at scale a statistically significant amount of data that shows conclusively that the autonomous car has, let's say, half the accident rate of a human-driven car, I think that's difficult to ignore, because at that point, stopping autonomy means killing people. So I actually do not think that there will be significant regulatory barriers provided there is conclusive data that the autonomous car is safer than
C'est exactement ce que je
a
vous disais tout à
human-driven
l'heure.
car. And
La voiture
in
autonome,
my
elle
view,
va
this will be
s'imposer
much like
d'elle-même quand on va
elevators.
voir qu'il y a moins de morts sur les routes
Elevators
locales et
used
qu'elle est
to
beaucoup
be
plus sûre.
operated by a guy with
C'est
a relay
tellement
switch.
évident.
But sometimes that guy would get tired or drunk or just make a mistake and shear somebody in half between floors. So now we just get in an elevator and press a button. We don't think
Ah,
about
tu vois? Ah, c'est ce que je dis tout le temps, l'exemple
In
de
fact, it's kind of weird that somebody's
l'ascenseur.
standing there with a relay switch.
Ah, j'adore, il prend le même exemple que
That'll
moi.
be how cars work. You
Bah
just
oui, bien sûr, maintenant on monte
summon a car
dans l'ascenseur, on
using your
appuie sur un
phone.
bouton et on lui dit de
You
monter
get
à
in,
l'étage, il n'y a
it
plus
takes you
personne
to a
qui opère avec
destination, you
les
get out.
manettes.
You don't even think about it.
You don't even
Ah,
think
il m'a
about it.
piqué mon analogie, Elon.
Just like an elevator. It takes you to your floor. That's it. Don't think about how the elevator is working or anything like that. Now something I should clarify is that Tesla will be operating the fleet.
Écoutez,
So
écoutez,
you can think of like how Tesla,
écoutez ça.
think of Tesla like, I don't know, some combination of Airbnb and Uber, meaning that, there'll be some number of cars that Tesla owns itself and operates in the fleet. There'll be some number of cars, and then there'll be a bunch of cars where they're owned by the end user, but that
Voyez?
end user can add or subtract their car to the fleet whenever they want. And they can decide if they want to
Il y a une partie
only
des
let
voitures qui vont
the
avoir
car be used
eux-mêmes,
by friends and
il l'a
family,
dit,
or only by 5-star users, or by anyone. And at any time, they could have the car come back to them and be exclusively theirs,
Right.
like an Airbnb. You could rent out your guest room or not anytime you want. As our fleet grows, we have 7 million cars, 9 million cars, eventually tens of millions of cars worldwide. With a constant feedback loop, every time something goes wrong, that gets added to the training data, and you get this training flywheel happening in the same way that Google search has the sort of flywheel. It's very difficult to compete with Google because people are constantly doing searches and clicking, and Google's getting that feedback loop. It's the same with Tesla, but at a scale that is maybe difficult to comprehend, but ultimately be tens of millions. I think there's also some potential here for an AWS element down the road, where if we've got very powerful inference, because we've got a hardware 3 in the cars, but now all cars are being made with hardware 4. Hardware 5 is pretty much designed and should be in cars hopefully towards the end of next year. And there's a potential to run, when the car is not moving, to actually run distributed inference. So kind of like AWS, but distributed inference. Like, it takes a lot of computers to train an AI model, but many orders of magnitude less compute to run it. So if you can imagine a future perhaps where there's a fleet of 100 million Teslas, and on average they've got like maybe a kilowatt of inference compute, that's 100 gigawatts of inference compute distributed all around the world. It's pretty hard to put together 100 gigawatts of AI compute. And even in an autonomous future where the car is perhaps used, instead of being used 10 hours a week, is used 50 hours a week, that still leaves over 100 hours a week where the car inference computer could be doing something else. And it seems like it would be a waste not to use it.
Actually, do you want to chime in on your process and safety?
Yeah, we have like multiple tiers of validating the safety. For like in any given week, we train hundreds of neural networks that can produce different trajectories for how to drive the car. We replay them through the millions of clips that we have already collected from our users and our own QA. those are like critical events, like someone jumping out in front or like other critical events that we have gathered a database over many, many years. And we replay through all of them to make sure that we are net improving safety. And on top of it, we have simulation systems that also try to recreate this and test this in closed loop fashion. Once all of this is validated, we give it to our own QA drivers. We have hundreds of them in different cities in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Austin, New York, a lot of different locations. They are also driving this and collecting real world miles. And we have an estimate of what are the critical events. Are they a net improvement compared to the previous week's builds? And once we have confidence that the build is a net improvement, then we start shipping to early users, like 2,000 employees initially, that they would get the build. They would give feedback on if it's an improvement or are they noticing some new issues that we did not capture in our own QA process. And only after all of this is validated, then we go to external customers. And even when we go external, we have live dashboards of monitoring every critical event that's happening in the fleet, sorted by the criticality of it. So we are having a constant pulse on the build's quality and the safety improvement along the way. And then any failures, like Elon alluded to, you get the data back, add it to the training, and that improves the model in the next cycle. So we have this constant feedback loop of issues, fixes, evaluations, and then it rinse and repeat. And especially with the new V12 architecture, all of this is automatically improving without requiring much engineering interventions, in the sense that engineers don't have to be creative in how they code the algorithms. It's mostly learning on its own based on data. So you see that, okay, we failed here, or this is how a person shows, this is how you drive this intersection or something like that. We get the data back, we add it to the neural network, and it learns from that training data automatically, instead of some engineers saying that, oh, here you must rotate the steering wheel by this much or something like that. There's no hard if-else conditions. It's everything is neural network. It's very soft. It's probabilistic. So it will adapt its probability distribution based on the new data that it's getting.
Yeah, and we do have some insight into how good the things will be in let's say 3 or 4 months, because we have advanced models that are far more capable than what is in the car, but have some issues with them that we need to fix. So there'll be a step change improvement in the capabilities of the car, but it'll have some quirks that are that need to be addressed in order to release it. As Ashok was saying, we have to be very careful in what we release to the fleet, or to customers in general. So if we look at say 12.4 and 12.5, which are really could arguably even be version 13 and version 14, because it's pretty close to a total retrain of the neural nets in each case, or substantially different. So we have good insight into where the models, how well the car will perform in say 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, in terms of scaling laws, people in the AI community generally talk about model scaling laws, where they increase the model size a lot, and then they have corresponding gains in performance. But we have also figured out scaling laws in other axes. In addition to the model size scaling, we can also have data scaling. You can increase the amount of data you use to train the neural network, and that also gives similar gains. And you can also scale up by training compute. You can train it for much longer and get on more GPUs or more Dojo nodes, and that also gives better performance. And you can also have architecture scaling, where you come up with better architectures that for the same amount of compute produce better results. So a combination of model size scaling, data scaling, training compute scaling, and the architecture scaling, we can basically extrapolate, okay, if we continue scaling based on this ratio, we can sort of predict future performance. Obviously, it takes time to do the experiments, because it takes few weeks to train. It takes a few weeks to collect tens of millions of video clips and process all of them. But you can estimate what's going to be the future progress based on the trends that we have seen in the past, and they've generally held true based on the past data.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to the next question, which is, can we get an official announcement of the timeline for the $25,000 vehicle?
Ça va intéresser des gens là.
Réveillez-vous. Elon mentioned it in the opening remarks, but as he mentioned, we're updating our future vehicle lineup to accelerate the launch of our low-cost vehicles in a more CapEx efficient way. That's our mission, to get the most affordable cars to customers as fast as possible. These new vehicles we built on our existing lines in open capacity, And that's a major shift, to utilize all our capacity with marginal CapEx before we go spend high CapEx to do anything.
Yeah, we'll talk about this more on August 8th. But I mean, really, the way to think of Tesla is almost entirely in terms of solving autonomy and being able to turn on that autonomy for a gigantic fleet. And I think it might be the biggest asset value appreciation in history when that day happens, when you can do unsupervised full self-driving.
5 million cars.
Yeah.
Well, a little less.
Well,
Some of those have, yeah.
You know, it'll be 7 million cars, you know, in a year or so.
Yeah.
And then 10 million, and then, you know, eventually we're talking about tens of millions of cars. Not eventually, it's like before the end of this decade. Yeah, before the end of the decade, it's several tens of millions of cars, I think.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the progress of Cybertruck ramp?
C'est pas
I
évident
can
à
take
lire
that one
entre
too.
les lignes,
Cybertruck
là,
at 1K a week just a couple weeks ago. This happened in the first 4 to 5 months since we SOP'd late last year. Of course, volume production is what matters. That's what drives costs. And so our costs are dropping. But the ramp still faces like a lot of challenges with so many new technologies, some supplier limitations, et cetera. And we'll continue to ramp this year, just focusing on cost efficiency and quality.
Okay, thank you. The next question, have any of the legacy automakers contacted Tesla about possibly licensing FSD in the future?
We're in conversations with one major automaker regarding licensing FSD.
Oh.
Thank you.
Wow.
Next question is about the robotaxi unveil. Elon already talked about that, so we'll have to wait till August.
La technologie du FSD.
The following question is about the next generation vehicle. We already talked about that.
Un seul, hein?
So let's go to the Semi. What is the timeline for scaling Semi?
Le semi-remorque.
I think.
Sure. So we're finalizing the engineering of the Semi to enable like a super cost-effective, high-volume production with our learnings from our fleet and our pilot fleet and Pepsi's fleet, which we're expanding this year marginally. In parallel, as we showed in the shareholders deck, we have started construction on the factory in Reno. Our first vehicles are planned for late 2025 with external customers starting in 2026.
Okay, couple more questions. So our favorite, can we make FSD transfer permanent until FSD is fully delivered with level 5 autonomy?
No.
Cela dit, il faut une gigafactory en un an. Donc,
next question. What is gating the production ramp at Lathrop? Where do you see the megapack run rate at the end of the year? Mike?
Yeah, Lathrop is ramping as planned. We have our second GA line allowing us to increase our exit rate from 20 gigawatt hours per year to, at the start of this year, to 40 gigawatt hours per year by the end of the year. That line is commissioned. There's really nothing limiting the ramp. It's given the longer sales cycles for these large projects, we typically have order visibility 12 to 24 months prior to ship dates. So we're able to plan the build plan several quarters in advance. So this allows us to ramp the factory to align with the business and order growth. Lastly, we'd like to thank our customers globally for their trust in Tesla as a partner for these incredible projects.
Wow.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to analyst questions. The first question comes from Tony Sacconaghi from Bernstein. Tony, please go ahead and
la cadence, la capacité au fur et à mesure qu'ils sont demandés.
Thank you for taking the question. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on kind of the new vehicles that you talked about today. Are these like tweaks on existing models, given that they're going to be running on the same lines, or are these like new models, and how should we think about them, in the context of like the Model 3 Highland update? What will these models be like relative to that? And given the quick time frame, Model 3 Highland has required a lot of work and a lot of retooling. Maybe you can help put that all in context. Thank you. And I have a follow-up, please.
I think we've said all we will on that front. So what's your follow-up?
It's a more personal one for you, Elon, which is that you're leading many important companies right now. Maybe you can just talk about where your heart is at in terms of your interests and do you expect to lessen your involvement with Tesla at any point over the next 3 years?
Super question.
Well, Tesla
Mais je me tape
constitutes
de
the majority
Tesla.
of my work time, and I work pretty much every day of the week. It's rare for me to take a Sunday afternoon off. So I'm gonna make sure Tesla is very prosperous, and it is. I think it is prosperous, and it will be very much so in the future.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Adam Jonas from Morgan Stanley. Adam, please go ahead and unmute.
Okay, great. Hey, Elon. So you and your team on volume expect a 2024 growth rate notably lower than that achieved in 2023. But what's your team's degree of confidence on growth above 0%? Or in other words, does that statement leave room for potentially lower sales year on year?
No, I think we'll have higher sales this year than last year.
Okay. My follow-up, Elon, on future product. If you had nailed execution, assuming that you nail execution on your next gen, cheaper vehicles, more aggressive giga castings, I don't want to say one piece, but getting closer to one piece, structural pack, unboxed, 300-mile range, $25,000 price point. Putting aside robotaxi, those features unique to you, how long would it take your best Chinese competitors to copy a cheaper and better vehicle that you could offer a couple of years from now? How long would it take your best Chinese competitors to copy that? Thanks.
Intéressant, hein? Combien de temps les Chinois vont mettre pour copier ce qu'ils vont présenter?
What our competitors could do, except we've done relatively better than they have. If you look at the drop in our competitors in China sales versus our drop in sales, our drop was less than theirs. So we're doing well. But I think Kathy Wood said it best. Like, really, we should be thought of as an AI or robotics company. If you value Tesla as just like an auto company,
Il redit encore, hein?
you just have to fundamentally. It's just the wrong framework, and it will come to. If you ask the wrong question, then the right answer is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Très H2G2, ça.
If
Vous
somebody
posez pas la bonne
doesn't believe Tesla's
question.
going to solve autonomy, I think they should not be an investor in the company. Like that is, but we will, and we are. And then you have a car that goes from 10 hours of use a week, like an hour and a half a day, to probably 50, but it costs the same.
I think that's the key thing to remember, right? Especially if you look at FSD supervised. If you didn't believe in autonomy, they should give you a preview that this is coming. It's actually getting better day by day.
Yeah, if you've not tried the FSD 12.3, and like I said, 12.4 is going to be significantly better, and 12.5 even better than that, and we have visibility into those things, then you really don't understand what's going on. It's not possible.
Yeah, and that's why we can't just look at just as a car company, because a car company would just have a car. But here we have more than a car company, because the cars can be autonomous. And like I said, it's happening.
Yeah, this is all in addition to Tesla working. The overall AI community is just like improving rapidly.
Yeah. I mean, we're putting the actual auto in automobile. So, so sort of a lot of it, we like, well, sort of like, tell us about future horse carriages you're making. I'm like, well, actually, it doesn't need a horse. That's the whole point.
Ouais, c'est vrai ça.
That's really the whole point.
Allez, présentez-nous la prochaine attelage à cheval que vous allez faire. Et le mec va dire, non, il n'y aura pas d'attelage à cheval, tu ne poses pas la bonne question, puisque maintenant, ça va être des voitures. Et là, c'est pareil. À quoi va ressembler la prochaine nouvelle voiture que vous allez présenter? En fait, ça sera une voiture autonome, donc mon pote, la question est totalement mauvaise. Ouais, on a une nouvelle voiture avec... à quoi va ressembler le volant de votre nouvelle Tesla, Elon? Les sensations de conduite, elle va être autonome, man.
And I understand completely why that would be. So I'm not necessarily asking about that. I'm asking if you've come up with any mechanism by which you can ensure that you'll obtain that level of voting control, because if not, then the core part of the thesis could potentially be at risk. So any additional commentary you might have on that topic?
Well, I think no matter what, Tesla, even if I got kidnapped by aliens tomorrow, Tesla will solve autonomy, maybe a little slower, but it would solve autonomy for vehicles at least. I don't know if it would win on with respect to Optimus or with respect to future products, but it would. But there's enough momentum for Tesla to solve autonomy, even if I disappeared for vehicles. Now, there's
Okay.
a whole range of things we can do in the future beyond that. I'd be more reticent with respect to Optimus. If we have a super sentient humanoid robot that can follow you indoors and that you can't escape, we're talking Terminator level risk, then I'd be uncomfortable with, if there's not some meaningful level of influence over how that is deployed. If there's shareholders have an opportunity to ratify or re-ratify the sort of competition, I guess I can't say that. Whatever, but that is a fact. They have an opportunity.
Okay. Very good.
And we'll see if the company generates a lot of positive cash flow, we could obviously buy back shares.
All right, that's actually all very helpful context. Thank you. Maybe one final question, then I'll pass it on. OpEx reductions. Thank you for quantifying the impact there. I'd be interested also in potentially more qualitative discussion of what the implications are for these headcount reductions. What are the types of activities that you're presumably sacrificing as a result of parting ways with these folks? Thanks very much.
So, like we said, we've done these headcount reductions across the board. And, as companies grow over time, there are certain redundancies, there's some duplication of efforts which happens in certain areas. So you need to go back and look at where all these pockets are, get rid of it. So we're basically going through that exercise wherein we're like, hey, how do we set this company right for the next phase of growth? And the way to think about it is, any tree which grows, it needs pruning. This is the pruning exercise which we went through. And at the end of it, we'll be much stronger and much more resilient to deal with the future, because the future is really bright. Like I said in my opening remarks, we just have to get through this period and get there.
Yeah, we're not giving up anything that it's significant that I'm aware of. So we've had a long period of prosperity from 2019 to now, and so if a company sort of organizationally is 5% wrong per year, that accumulates to 25-30% of inefficiency. We've made some corrections along the way, but it is time to reorganize the company for the next phase of growth. And you really need to reorganize it, just like a human. When we start off as one cell and become a zygote and blastocyst, and you start growing arms and legs, and briefly you have a tail. And so.
But you shed the tail.
You shed the tail, hopefully, and then you're a baby. And you basically have to be different. The organism, a company is kind of like a creature growing, and if you don't reorganize it for different phases of growth, it will fail. Right. You can't have the same organizational structure if you're 10 cells versus 100 versus 1 million versus 1 billion versus a trillion. Where humans are like around 35 trillion cells. Doesn't feel like it feels like feel like one person, but you're basically a walking cell colony of roughly 35 trillion, depending on your body mass, and about 3 times that number in bacteria. So anyway, you've got to reorganize the company for a new phase of growth, or it will fail to achieve that growth.
Thank you. Let's go to Mark Delaney from Goldman Sachs. Mark, please go ahead and unmute.
Yes, good afternoon. Thanks very much for taking the question. The company had previously characterized potential FSD licensing discussions as in the early phase, and some OEMs had not really been believing in it. Can you elaborate on how much the licensing business opportunity you mentioned today has progressed? And is there anything Tesla needs to achieve with the technology in terms of product milestones in order to be successful at reaching a licensing agreement, in your view?
Well, I think it just needs to be obvious that our approach is the right approach. And I think it is. I think we're now with 12.3. If you just have the car drive you around, it is obvious that our solution, with a relatively low cost inference computer and standard cameras, can achieve self-driving. No LiDARs, no radars, no ultrasonics, nothing. Just
no heavy integration work for vehicle manufacturers.
Yeah, it's so it would really just be a case of having them use the same cameras and inference computer and licensing our software.
Oh,
and but it's once it becomes obvious that if you don't have this in a car, nobody wants your car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like it's a smart car. I still remember back when Nokia was king of the hill.
Yeah,
cell phone.
Yeah, crushing. And I saw them come out with a smartphone that was basically a brick with limited functionality. And then the iPhone and Android. But people still did not understand that all the phones are going to be that way. There's not going to be any flip phones. There'll be a niche product.
Or home phones.
C'est exactement ce que je dis dans la vidéo sur la discussion. Exactement pareil. Je prends l'exemple de Nokia aussi. Deux exemples. Exemple de l'ascenseur, exemple de Nokia. Nokia, ils avaient beau être les meilleurs. Quand l'iPhone est sorti, ils avaient beau sortir le Nokia le moins cher possible, le plus beau Nokia tout neuf, personne n'aurait voulu la Nokia. Là, c'est pareil. La voiture qui va arriver, elle ne sera pas autonome, elle aura beau être la meilleure, la plus belle intérieure, la meilleure marque, elle ne sera pas autonome, personne n'en aura rien à foutre.
Becomes not optional.
Becomes a method of survival.
Yeah, so it's license it or nobody will buy your car.
Ben ouais.
I mean, one other thing which I'll add is
c'est là qu'il va y avoir tellement de
conversations which we've had with some of these OEMs. I just want to also point out that they take a lot of time
de voitures. Tous ceux qui s'en foutent. Déjà, il y en a plein qui s'en foutent de la voiture électrique. Il y en a encore plus qui s'en foutent de la voiture autonome. Alors, ça va être impossible. Ils seront ni électriques ni autonomes. Ils n'ont aucune chance de survie, ces mecs-là.
Big difference between us and them, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, a deal signed now would result in it being in a car in probably 3 years.
That would be early.
Yeah, that's like lightning, basically. So
that's being an eager OEM.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we do sign a deal. I think we're good chance we do sign a deal this year. Maybe more than one. But yeah, it would be probably 3 years before it's integrated with a car, even though all you need is cameras and our inference computer. So it's like not a massive design change.
Yeah, and again, just to clarify, it's not the work which we have to do, it's the work which they have to do, which will take the time.
Mm-hmm. Ouais, c'est les autres qui doivent investir dans les ordinateurs comme Tesla.
Very helpful, thank you. My follow-up was to better understand Tesla's approach to pricing going forward. Previously, the company had said that the price reductions were driving incremental demand. With how affordable the cars have become, especially for vehicles that have access to IRA credits and some of the leasing offers that Tesla has in place, do you still see meaningful incremental price reductions as making sense from here for the existing products? And can the company meaningfully lower prices from here and also stay free cash flow positive on an annual basis with the current product set? Thanks.
Yeah, I think we can be free cash flow positive meaningfully. Yeah.
I think Vaibhav said it in his opening remarks, like our cost down efforts, we're offsetting the price cuts.
That's what I was going to say.
Goal. Like we're trying to give it back to the customers.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like for any given company, if you sell a great product at a great price, if you have a great product at a great price, the sales will be excellent. That's true of any arena. So over time, we do need to keep making sure that it's a great product at a great price, and moreover, that price is accessible to people. So it's not, you have to solve both the value for money and the fundamental affordability question. The fundamental affordability question is sometimes overlooked. If somebody's earning several $100,000 a year, they don't think of a car from a fundamental affordability standpoint. But for the vast majority of people are living paycheck to paycheck. So it actually makes a difference if the cost per month for lease or financing is $10 one way or the other. So it is important to keep improving the affordability and to keep, it's just like making the price
more accessible.
Yeah, exactly. Make the price more accessible, the value for money better, and to keep improving that over time.
But also to make kick-ass cars that people want to buy.
Yeah, it's got to be a great product at a great price, and the standards for what constitutes a great product at a great price keep increasing. So there's like you can't just be static. You have to keep making the car better, improving the price of it, improving the cost of production, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and in fact, like I said in my opening remarks, also like the updated Model 3 is a fantastic car. I don't think people fully even understand the amount of engineering effort which has gone, and Lars and team have actually put out videos explaining how much the car is different when it looks and feels different. Not only it looks and feels different, we've added so much value to it, but you can lease it for like as low as $299 a month.
Yeah.
Ouais.
Without gas.
Ça, c'est un bon point aussi là pour ce que vous dites dans le chat là.
All right, the next question comes from.
Pourquoi pas partir sur un leasing plutôt que d'acheter.
Please go and unmute.
Ça serait un bon truc aussi. Pas les moyens d'acheter. Un leasing, c'est un bon plan.
First, could you please see in additional geographies, including maybe clarifying your recent comment about China? Thank you.
I mean, like new markets? Yeah, there are a bunch of markets where we don't currently sell cars that we should be selling cars in. We'll see some acceleration of that.
Il y a énormément de marchés où ils sont pas.
FSD in new markets?
Yeah, so the thing about the end-to-end neural net based autonomy is that just like a human, it actually works pretty well without modification in almost any market. So we plan on, with the approval of the regulators, releasing it as a supervised autonomy system in any market where we can get regulatory approval for that, which we think includes China.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just like a human, you can go rent a car in a foreign country and you can drive pretty well. Obviously, if you live in that country, you'll drive better, and so we'll make the car drive better in these other countries with country-specific training. But it can drive quite well almost everywhere.
Yeah, the basics of driving are basically the same everywhere. Like a car is a car, traffic is a traffic light, road is a road.
Yeah, it understands that it shouldn't hit things no matter where it is.
Exactly. There are some road rules that you need to follow. In China, you shouldn't cross over a solid line to do a lane change. US is a recommendation, I think. China, you get fined heavily if you do that. We have to do some adaptations, but it's mostly smaller adaptations, not like an entire change of stack or something like that.
Ouais, c'est intéressant, il va falloir qu'ils s'adaptent le FSD aux réglementations locales.
Yep. So my follow-up has to do with the first quarter
code de la route,
deliveries, and I'm curious as to whether or not you feel that supply constraints that you mentioned throughout the release impacted the results, and maybe can you help us quantify that, and is that why you have some confidence in unit growth in 2024?
Yeah, I think we did cover this a little bit in the opening remarks too. Q1 had a lot of different things which were happening. Seasonality was a big one. Continued pressure from the macroeconomic environment. We had attacks at our factory. We had Red Sea attacks. We're ramping Model 3. We're ramping Cybertruck. All these things are happening. I mean, it almost feels like a culmination of all those activities in a constrained period. And that gives us that confidence that, hey, we don't expect these things to recur.
Yeah, we think Q2 will be a lot better.
Ah, c'est fou.
It's just one thing after another.
Ils sont en train de faire le nouvel modèle 3. Monter en puissance à Berlin. La Chine, elle bombarde à bloc. Sortir le Y. Sortir le Y. Sortir le Cybertruck. Sortir le robot. Sortir les batteries. Et malgré la mauvaise conjoncture, ils bombardent à mort. C'est dingue. Ils font tout en même temps. Il faudrait combien d'entreprises différentes pour arriver à faire ce que eux font en une seule entreprise? C'est dingue.
We did overcomplicate the sales process, which we've just in the past week or so have greatly simplified. So it became far too complex to buy a Tesla, whereas it should just be you can buy the car in under a minute. So we're getting back to the you can buy a Tesla in under a minute interface from what was quite complex.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Colin Rush from Oppenheimer. Colin, go ahead and unmute, please.
Thanks so much, guys. Given the pursuit of Tesla really as a leader in AI for the physical world, and your comments around distributed inference, can you talk about what that approach is unlocking beyond what's happening in the vehicle right now?
So, do you want to say something?
Yeah, like you mentioned, like the car, even when it's a full robotaxi, it's probably going to be used around 50 hours a week.
That's my guess. Like a third of the hours of the week.
Yeah, it could be more or less, but then there's certainly going to be some hours left for charging and cleaning and maintenance. In that world, it can do a lot of other workloads. Even right now, we are seeing, for example, these LLM companies have this like batch workloads where they send a bunch of documents, and those are run through pretty large neural networks. Take a lot of compute to chunk through those workloads. And now that we have already paid for this compute in these cars, it might be wise to use them and not let them be idle, be like buying a lot of expensive machinery and letting them be idle. Like, we don't want that. You'd want to use the compute as much as possible and close to like basically 100% of the time, make effective use of it.
That's why I think it's analogous to Amazon Web Services, where people didn't expect that AWS would be the most valuable part of Amazon when it started out as a bookstore. So that was on nobody's radar. But they found that they had excess compute because the compute needs would spike to extreme levels.
Exactement ma vidéo sur la description dont on parle aujourd'hui. Ça me fait trop plaisir.
So then what should they do with all that excess compute for the rest of the year?
Exemple d'Amazon, je le donne aussi.
That's kind of monetize it. Yeah, monetize it. So it seems like kind of a no-brainer to say, okay, if we've got millions and then tens of millions of vehicles out there where the computers are idle most of the time, that we might as well have them do something useful.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, I mean, if you get like to the 100 million vehicle level, which I think we will at some point get to, then, and you've got a kilowatt of usable compute, and maybe you're on hardware 6 or 7 by that time, then you really, I think you'd have on the order of 100 gigawatts of usable compute, which might be more than anyone, more than any company.
Wow.
Probably more than any company.
Yeah, probably. Because it takes a lot of intelligence to drive the car anyway. And when it's not driving the car, you just put this intelligence to other uses, to solving scientific problems.
Just like a human.
Or answering dumb questions.
Wow, c'est dingue ça.
We've already learned a lot of deploying workloads to these compute nodes.
Yeah. And unlike laptops and
je vous mets le lien de la vidéo sur la description
so it's easier to distribute the workload across different nodes as opposed to asking users for permission on their own cell phones to be very tedious.
Well, you're just draining the battery on them.
Yeah, exactly. The battery is also limited.
So, like technically, I suppose like Apple would have the most amount of distributed compute, but you can't use it because you can't get you can't just run the phone at full power and drain the battery.
Yep.
So.
Ils veulent se servir, une fois qu'ils auront le FSD, se servir des ordinateurs de la flotte de Tesla pour pouvoir se servir de cette puissance de calcul, faire plein de trucs. C'est fou ça.
50 or 60 kilowatt-hour pack, it's still not a big deal to run.
If you're plugged in,
whether you're plugged in or not, you could be plugged in or not plugged in. You could run for 10 hours and use 10 kilowatt-hours of your kilowatt of compute.
Forever.
Yeah.
We're together built-in liquid cooled thermal management.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Expense for data centers.
J'avais pas pensé à ça.
It's already there in the car.
Exactly. So it's distributed power generation. It's just distributed access to power and distributed cooling. And it's already paid for.
Yeah, I mean that distributed
quand on va voir ma vidéo, tu vas voir.
People underestimate that costs a lot of money.
It does.
Yeah, and the capex is shared by the entire world.
Yes.
Sort of everyone owns a small chunk, and they get a small profit out of it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, guys.
And this might follow up a little bit more
mundane. Looking at the 4680 ramp, can you talk about how close you are to target yields and when you might start to accelerate incremental capacity expansions on that technology?
We're making good progress on that. But I don't think it's super important for at least the near term. As Lars said, we think it will be, exceed the competitiveness of suppliers by the end of this year, and then we'll continue to improve it.
I think it's important to note also that the ramp right now is relevant to the Cybertruck ramp.
Yeah,
and so we're not going to just randomly build 4680s unless we have a place to put them. And so we're going to, make sure we're prudent about that. But we also have a lot of investments with all our cell suppliers and vendors. They're great partners and they, done great development work with us.
Les 4680, elles vont exclusivement pour l'instant dans le Cybertruck, étant donné que pour l'instant, ils n'ont pas vraiment une ligne de production à bloc pour le semi-remorque. Donc, ça ne sert à rien qu'ils bombardent à bloc sur les 4680. Ils ne savent pas quoi en faire, il a dit.
What would happen with our suppliers? Because for a while there, it was very difficult because every big car maker put in massive battery orders. And so the price per kilowatt hour of lithium-ion batteries went to crazy numbers, to crazy levels.
Bonkers.
Yeah, just bonkers. So okay, we've got to have some hedge here to deal with, cost per kilowatt hours numbers that were double what we anticipated. If we have an internal cell production, then we have that hedge against demand shocks, with too much demand. That's really the way to think about it. It's not like we want to take on a whole bunch of problems that just for the hell of it. We did the cell program in order to address the crazy increase in cost per kilowatt hour from our suppliers due to gigantic orders placed by every car maker on Earth. So,
okay, thank you. And the last question comes from Ben Kalo from Baird.
C'est marrant qu'il dise ça, on dirait qu'il regrette un peu d'avoir investi dans les cellules, étant donné que les Chinois, maintenant, ils en produisent plein, et qu'il n'y a pas vraiment de shortage des cellules et que le prix descend au lieu de monter comme ils ont anticipé. Protégé, quoi.
Is, I guess, thinking about the Tesla stock should really drive FSD 12.3. You can't. It's impossible to understand the company if you do not do this.
Vous voyez, et on en parle encore une fois. Là, Elon, il a dit, vous ne pouvez pas comprendre la boîte si vous ne parlez pas du FSD. On ne parle jamais du FSD en France. À chaque fois, c'est Tesla. Oh, il y a un nouvel enjoliveur. Oh, il y a une nouvelle suspension pneumatique. Il y a un nouvel intérieur. Il y a un nouveau bandeau LED. Mais jamais on parle du FSD parce que le FSD.
Investor Day last year,
voilà.
You mentioned that auto COGS per unit for the next gen vehicle would decline by 50% versus the current 3 and Y. I think that was implying something around $20,000 of COGS. about a third of that was coming from the unboxed manufacturing process. But I'm curious if you see an opportunity that some of the other drivers around powertrain cost reduction or material cost savings, would those be largely transferable to some of the new products that you're now talking about introducing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in short, yes. I mean, like, the unboxed manufacturing method is certainly great and revolutionary, but with it comes some risk because, it's new production lines, not. But all the subsystems we developed, whether it was powertrains, drive units, battery improvements in manufacturing and automation, thermal systems, seating, the integration of interior components, and reduction of LV controllers, all that's transferable, and that's what we're doing. Trying to get it into our products as fast as possible. And so that engineering work, we're not trying to just throw it away and put it, in a coffin. We're going to take it and utilize it to the best advantage of the cars we make and the future cars we make.
Okay, great. And then just on that topic of 4680 cells, I know you mentioned it. You really thought of it more as like a hedge against rising battery costs from other OEMs, right. But it seems even today, it seems like you would have a cost advantage against some of those other automakers. And I'm wondering, given the rationalizing of your vehicle manufacturing plans that you're talking about now, if there's an opportunity to maybe convert the 4680 cells and maybe sell those to other automakers and really generate an additional revenue stream. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about that.
Right. What seems to be happening is that unless I'm missing something, the orders for batteries from other automakers have declined dramatically. So we're seeing much more competitive prices for cells from our suppliers, dramatically more competitive than in the past. It is clear that a lot of our suppliers have excess capacity.
Yeah. In addition to what Elon said, this is Karan, by the way. In addition to what Elon said about 4680s, what 4680 did for us from a supply chain perspective was help us understand the supply chain that's upstream of our cell suppliers. So a lot of the deals that we had struck for 4680, we can also supply those materials to our partners, help reducing the overall cost back to Tesla. So we're basically inserting ourselves in the upstream supply chain by doing that. So that's also been beneficial in reducing the overall pricing, in addition to the excess capacity that these suppliers have.
Yeah. Now, I mean, this is going to wax and wane, obviously. So, there's going to be a boom and bust in battery cell production. Where production exceeds supply, and then supply exceeds production, and back and forth, kind of like, I don't know, DRAM or something. So it's like what is true today will not be true in the future.
Right.
There's going to be somewhat of a boom and bust cycle here. And then there are additional complications with government incentives, like the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, which I always found like a funny name for a
comical name.
Yeah, is it like the Irish Republican Army, the Internet Research Agency from Russia?
Independent retirement account?
Yeah, exactly. Roth IRA. And it's like forced Spider-Man situations, which IRA wins. But it does complicate the incentive structure, so that there is perhaps there's stronger demand for cells that are produced in the U.S. than outside the U.S. But then how long does the IRA last? I don't know.
Which is why it's important that we have both in-house cells and vendor cells to hedge against all of this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all the time we have today. But at the same time, I would like to make a short announcement. And I wanted to let the investment community know that about a month ago, I met up with Elon and Vaibhav and announced that I'll be moving on from the world of investor relations. I'll be hanging around for another couple of months or so feel free to reach out anytime. But after this 7-year sprint, I'm going to be taking a break and spending some good quality time with my family. And I wanted to say that these 7 years have been the greatest privilege of my professional life. I'll never forget the memories
Ouais, c'est toujours lui qui fait
I started literally at the
l'interview.
beginning of production hell and just watching the company from the inside to see what it's become today. And I'm especially super thankful to the people in this room and dozens of people outside of this room that I've worked for over the years. I think the team strength and teamwork at Tesla is unlike anything else I've seen in my career. Elon, thank you very much for this opportunity that I got back in 2017. Thank you for seeking investor feedback and regularly and debating it with me.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason I reached out to you was because I thought your analysis of Tesla was the best that I'd seen.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you for helping Tesla get to where it is today over 7 years. It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for all the thousands of shareholders that we've met over the years and walked around factories and loved all the interactions, even the tough ones. And yeah, looking forward to the call in the next 3 months, but I'll be on the other side listening in. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Et la fin du webcast. Bon, c'était pas mal intéressant. Pas mal intéressant. Pour répondre à la question tout à l'heure de David, qui était où la question? La question, c'était, en gros, mon avis sur le FSD. Je retrouve pas. On va arrêter le partage. Mon avis sur le FSD, je sais plus. Nanana. Enfin bref, à mon avis sur la FSD, c'est ce qu'il disait Elon, hein, c'est qu'effectivement, une voiture qui sera pas électrique et qui sera pas en même temps autonome, bah, ça sera même pas la peine de la faire, même pas la peine de la vendre. Donc le premier qui va y arriver, c'est celui qui va. Le premier qui sort la voiture autonome, c'est lui qui va décrocher bah, une grosse partie du gâteau. Et donc Tesla, ils ont l'air quand même bien placés pour pouvoir y arriver. Donc voilà, c'est mon avis. Après, je pense qu'il y aura effectivement plusieurs possibilités. Soit on aura notre propre voiture, les voitures qu'on a déjà, qui ont déjà le hardware nécessaire, qui feront l'application comme on a vu tout à l'heure. Et je pense, oui, comme il a dit Elon, il a dit, il y aura des voitures que vous aurez, vous, qui seront détenues par le client final, et il y aura des voitures qui seront opérées par Tesla. Ça, il a clairement dit. Alors, quelle est la proportion? Je ne sais pas. Est-ce que ça veut dire il y aura des voitures, c'est les S, les X, les 3 et les Y qui seront pour vous dans cette part-là, et les autres, c'est les robotaxis, c'est la nouvelle génération de plateforme. On ne le sait pas. Est-ce que dans la nouvelle génération de plateforme, il y aura la fameuse modèle 2 et que il y aura sur cette plateforme-là des voitures qui vont vendre et des voitures qui ne vont pas vendre? J'en sais rien. Franchement, j'en sais rien. Mais en tout cas, il a bien dit qu'il y aura des voitures dans la flotte, des voitures qui seront des véhicules qui seront gardés par et opérés par Tesla. Et ça, j'ai pas souvenir qu'il l'ait dit de manière aussi franche déjà. Donc, quand il fait des interviews et on voit un peu comment, à quoi il pense, on se dit ok, il va aller vers là. Mais c'est la première fois que je l'entends le dire vraiment. Donc voilà, c'était vraiment super intéressant, les amis. Merci d'avoir été là. On est resté encore 1 heure. On a fait 2 bonnes heures et demie de live. Ça fait plaisir. N'hésitez pas, comme d'habitude, à balancer un grand pouce avant de partir. Et puis nous, on se retrouvera très bientôt pour d'autres vidéos. Merci beaucoup d'avoir veillé jusqu'à aussi tard et d'avoir parlé de ça. Attends, il y a encore une question concernant le FSD. Alors, dernière question concernant le FSD. Comment tu vois l'intégration dans notre monde plein de constructeurs qui ont des voitures non autonomes dans un cadre sécurisé? Non, moi je pense tout simplement qu'arrivé à un moment, celui qui fera pas une voiture autonome, il va pas survivre, quoi, tout simplement. C'est comme il disait tout à l'heure Elon. Alors revenons en 2007, Steve Jobs présente l'iPhone. Si on en parle 3 mois plus tard et qu'on dit alors Nokia, comment vous voyez l'évolution du téléphone portable et des Nokia 3310 et des BlackBerry et tout ça, le mec qui te dit: «Oh oui, je pense qu'il va y avoir et des téléphones encore à clapper et puis il y aura un petit peu de gens qui auront des smartphones, mais pas plus». Le mec, il a tout faux, en fait. C'est une technologie qui en chasse une autre. C'est toujours comme ça. Donc l'iPhone, il est arrivé et Nokia, ils sont disparus. Parce ils s'en foutaient. Ils voulaient des trucs avec des touches. BlackBerry, pareil, voulait des trucs avec des touches. Il n'y avait pas d'application, il n'y avait pas internet dessus. Ils avaient beau être les meilleurs. Quand ce truc-là est arrivé, ça a été terminé pour eux. Et je pense que ça va être pareil. Ils vont arriver avec des voitures, avec une plateforme toute neuve. Ils vont pouvoir te faire une voiture cargo, une voiture break, un truc pour aller promener des chiens, un truc pour mettre des affaires de sport, un truc pour mettre du matériel. Tu l'appelles, hop, il vient te chercher, il t'amène à Bricorama, il t'amène chez Ikea, il t'amène au travail le matin. Voilà, certainement tu pourras, tu vois, faire du covoiturage aussi, t'inscrire sur l'application et tu vas dire: moi je pars de tel endroit, je dois être à tel endroit». Ils vont récupérer toutes les datas, ce que ne fait pas Blablacar, mais ils ont la data. Savoir que tous les gens dans le quartier là, ils vont tous dans le quartier là, hop, le matin, ils amènent une voiture, en te disant: toi tu as rendez-vous à 8h05, toi tu as rendez-vous à 8h07, tu as rendez-vous à 8h09 et on vient te chercher avec une navette et hop, 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 de manière autonome et on vient te déposer. Je pense que ça nous paraît complètement barjot parce que ça n'existe pas encore aujourd'hui, mais je vois ça comme ça. Donc, c'est le moyen même de se transporter qui va être totalement différent. Et les gens, ils vont dire: «J'en ai rien à foutre de conduire ma voiture. Pourquoi est-ce que je vais conduire moi une voiture? C'est compliqué, c'est fatigant, c'est chiant. Non, j'ai la navette qui vient me chercher moi, à l'heure que je veux ou à 2 ou 3 minutes d'intervalle». Parce que tu vas pouvoir dire: «Tous les jours, j'ai besoin que tu viennes me chercher à 25». Et à ce moment-là, il va dire: non, pas 25, mais à 27. Enfin, il y a plein de choses qui peuvent être faites avec ça qu'on n'imagine même pas. Et je pense que, voilà, quand, je sais pas, Renault va sortir sa nouvelle voiture, sa R5, elle aura beau être toute mignonne, mais les gens ils vont dire: «Mais j'en ai rien à foutre, je vais dépenser». Tout à l'heure, il y avait un gros débat dans le chat, une voiture, j'ai que 25 000 pour, acheter une voiture. Ils vont dire: «Mais attends, tu n'as même plus besoin de t'acheter ta voiture à 25 000 parce que ça va te coûter, quelques centimes, tous les jours pour t'amener au travail et quelques centimes pour t'amener au cinéma, puis aller faire n'importe quoi». Il y aura des voitures tout le temps. Tu as vu tout à l'heure dans l'app, ils disent: «Dans 3 minutes, il y a une voiture qui arrive». Donc quand on ira à ça, pourquoi on va dépenser 25 000 30 000 €, plus l'assurance, plus un parking, plus de la recharge? Ça n'a pas de sens. Ça n'a vraiment aucun intérêt. Donc je pense qu'on va aller vers ça. Mais comme toujours, si en 2007, je vous avais dit: «Ouais, bientôt, tu commanderas ta bouffe, tu pourras faire des rencarts, tu pourras regarder des films sur ton téléphone, tu pourras commander des billets d'avion, tu pourras commander une bagnole, tu pourras», qu'est-ce que j'ai comme application? Enfin, j'en sais rien, faire des vidéos, parler avec des amis du monde entier, je sais pas, regarder la bourse, lire tes mails, contrôler ta maison avec les applications genre EcoFlow et compagnie. Tu m'aurais dit: «Mais tu es débile ou quoi?» Enfin, n'importe quoi. Enfin, un téléphone, on téléphone et on envoie des SMS. Mais on n'aurait jamais imaginé un truc pareil. Donc je pense que là, c'est pareil, on n'imagine pas à quel point ça va être comme ça. Voilà. Voilà. Regarde, à Toulouse, le métro, c'est toutes les 3 minutes et sans chauffeur. Ouais. Voilà. Je pense que ça va être très, très intéressant et d'autant plus, il faudra absolument que vous soyez là, les gars, pour la présentation du robotaxi. Parce que je pense qu'il y a tellement de gens à qui ça leur passe au-dessus de la tête et qui aiment Tesla comme ils aiment, n'importe quelle autre marque de voiture. Et d'ailleurs, moi, je vais pas au Tesla Honor Day, j'y suis allé, 2 fois, maintenant j'y vais plus. Parce qu'au Tesla Honor Day, je me reconnais pas du tout dans les gens qui y sont. Moi, je parle de Tesla, l'entreprise, vous avez vu tout à l'heure, hein, le graphique avec le méga pack, les machins ici là. Et quand vous allez au Tesla Honor Day, ils sont bien gentils, j'ai aucun problème avec eux. Mais vous allez au Tesla Honor Day, ils vont parler du spoiler arrière, du nouveau gadget, du bouton hang show, du machin qu'on met à l'intérieur, du mec qui a tuné sa suspension, du mec qui a mis du carbone, du mec qui a teinté ses vitres, du mec qui a mis un PPF. Et en fait, ils ne font que parler de ce genre de trucs, alors que c'est un Tesla Honor Day. Alors OK, c'est Honor Day, donc c'est honneur de voiture, mais tu t'attends à ce que ça parle de Tesla un peu niveau plus plus. Mais quand moi j'y vais et que je commence à parler, des trucs qu'ils ont parlé là ce soir Tesla, de tout ce qu'il a parlé Elon là, mais les mecs, ça leur passe au-dessus de la tête, gravissime. Donc ça va être aussi un point capital à arriver à pour Tesla. Bon, je pense qu'ils trouveront le public, mais le public qu'ils ont aujourd'hui de leur clientèle, qui aime la voiture malgré tout, c'est des gens qui, quand tu leur parles de FSD et de pas conduire, ils ont un peu la trouille. Donc, il va falloir qu'ils se trouvent aussi un autre public, d'autres clients. C'est pour ça, je pense qu'il y aura des voitures que tu achèteras, des Tesla que tu achèteras, et il y aura des Tesla flotte. Et il y aura des Tesla que tu gardes que pour toi, et il y aura des Tesla, comme il a dit, Airbnb. Des Tesla, tu as ton Airbnb, tu as ton appartement qui t'appartient, tu pars une semaine, tu loues ton appart pendant une semaine en Airbnb. Et quand tu veux revenir, tu dis donc maintenant, l'appartement, il est que pour moi. Et ça sera pareil avec la voiture. Donc, j'ai envie que la voiture, elle soit tel jour ou à telle heure en mode autopartage. Et quand j'ai plus envie, elle ne l'est plus. Elle revient à mon point de départ. Donc, ça va être ça le truc. Donc, il y en aura pour tout le monde. Ceux qui veulent avoir leur voiture, basta, elle est que pour moi. Ceux qui veulent avoir leur voiture, mais qui sont OK pour la partager. Et il y aura les gens qui diront, moi, avoir une voiture, j'en ai rien à foutre. Je veux juste aller d'un point A à un point B. Aujourd'hui, je prends les transports en commun, le bus, le tram, le RER, le TER, peu importe. Donc, je m'en fous. J'ai pas mon transport à moi, que ça soit pas ma voiture ou que ça soit pas mon bus. Pour moi, c'est pareil. Donc, ça risque d'être assez intéressant d'être comme ça. Voilà. Voilà mon avis sur la question et je pense qu'ils en sont vraiment plus très loin parce que s'ils commencent à parler avec d'autres constructeurs pour licencier le FSD, c'est qu'il y a quand même du concret, quoi. Donc voilà, on aura l'occasion d'en reparler. Donc soyez là le 8 août, ça sera super important parce que il y aura plein de gens qui vont pas en parler. Il y aura plein de gens qui ça va leur passer là au-dessus. Et nous, on sera là. Et vous, si vous serez là, c'est que vous comprenez l'histoire et que vous pigez vraiment ce que c'est Tesla. Donc, ça sera vraiment un grand plaisir d'être avec vous, les amis. Bon, allez, on se laisse. À bientôt. Et puis, de toute façon, il y aura des vidéos très bientôt sur la chaîne, hein. Donc, ne vous en faites pas. On est dans le coin. On se quitte avec notre petite musique de fin. Il faut que je la cherche parce que je ne l'ai pas préparée. Donc, c'est parti. Elle est là. À bientôt. Bonne soirée tout le monde. Et bonne nuit même. Pour les dernières choses, je vais mettre, peut-être demain matin, je vous mettrai un questionnaire sur la chaîne pour savoir ce que vous avez pensé de cette soirée. Pas par rapport à moi, mais par rapport à ce qui s'est dit, bien évidemment. Donc voilà, pensez à aller faire un petit tour dans l'onglet communautaire demain matin. Ça sera présent. Allez, ciao.